I'm Kevin Ferdowsi, and I'm joined by my friend and international affairs colleague, John Blaha.
Hello.
And today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. John, you want to give some background?
Sure. You know, as our listeners, you very well know, we normally do a roundtable discussion of an underreported issue in international affairs. But today we're going to narrow that down quite a bit and just do a profile on one particular item, being either a person in power or like a world leader or a city, a country, et cetera, et cetera. So, we're just going to do a profile over one specific thing today. And Kevin, what are we going to be talking about?
So for our first spotlight segment, we're going to be talking about King Bhumibol Adulyadej. And I'm sure I mispronounced his name, but he is the long-reigning king of Thailand.
Yeah, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, he is the currently the longest ruling monarch on the planet, right?
He's the longest ruling monarch still alive, right? He's been king since late 40s.
Cool. So tell me about this guy. You know, Thailand is a country that we all know. It's obviously a very popular tourist destination, but I, for one, do not know much about the reigning king of Thailand. So give us some background on him. What makes him such a unique topic to cover?
So if we start at the beginning, because I think the beginning is actually interesting in the situation, he was born not in Thailand, but in the United States.
Right, so he's an American monarch.
You could say he's an American monarch, and I think the only monarch born in the United States, actually. So he was born in Massachusetts to his prince father, and his mother at the time was a commoner, but became princess. He's got an older brother, or had an older brother, I should say, who was king.
So if his older brother was king, you know, what was his dad doing?
His dad actually wasn't supposed to ever be king either. So
none of them were destined to be king.
None of them
right?
were destined to be king, yeah. So his dad, the prince, it was his brother who was king at the time. This might get a little confusing with all these brothers. But the former king of Thailand abdicated the throne.
Who is the current king's uncle.
Right, so the current king's uncle abdicated the throne, and then the current king's older brother ended up taking it, but at the age of 9, I think. So he took the throne at the age of 9. Sadly, though, when he was 20, he was shot and killed.
I believe there's still quite a bit of controversy around that, whether the perpetrators have actually been found or...
Right. There's still some controversy about who the perpetrators were. Thai authorities executed a few people who were responsible, but there are some claims out there that there was something else going on. But anyway, when his older brother was killed, the Thai king, the current king, Bhumibol, was next in line and took the throne. But before that, you know, he was never planning on being king. He was born in the United States. He grew up in Switzerland, was a big fan of jazz, was studying science. You know, it wasn't in his cards to become king.
So all this happened in the 1940s, right? And
right.
He assumed the throne in, I believe, 1947, and his coronation was in 1950. What has he been doing in the over half a century since he's been in power?
That's a good question. So his role is not so much political. In fact, generally, he tries to stay out of politics. So especially in a country that has experienced so many coups, it's kind of hard to stay out of politics. But occasionally, he'll step in, and he's so revered that when he does step in, it really has some sway. So, for example, in the early 90s, there was some controversy. The majority parties, there was a general whose name I definitely cannot pronounce, Krapayun, I gave it a shot, who was leading a coup and had aspirations to become prime minister, right? And people were scared that Thailand was going to fall in a civil war. So the king invites the two leaders to his palace for a televised talk between them. And because of Thai law, and also probably because of respect that they inherently had, they approached the king on their knees, which, we'll put this video in our show notes. It's pretty interesting. They approached the king on their knees, and the claim is that when the Thai people saw these generals on their knees, it changed their opinions, and the general ended up retiring from politics. So he was basically able to save the day. And in cases where he doesn't intervene, people assume that he kind of implicitly is accepting the coup or the leadership.
Interesting. So, obviously, he has this amazing amount of influence over his country, despite
I would say like no other leader does.
And being in his old age, he's in his mid 80s now, I believe. He's still able to exert such leadership over his country to just constantly quell all these coups.
Yeah, I don't get me wrong. I don't want to say constantly, because coups are still happening. There was a coup. I think the latest one was
2014.
There's still coups happening. I think just the assumption among the Thai people is that if the king's not saying anything, then he's okay with it. And there are different reasons behind that. Possibly, maybe he is okay with it. Maybe he's just too sick to be able to do anything about it. Maybe it's a calculated decision where he's thinking, if he says something and the people don't accept it, then that will undermine his power.
So what has allowed him to be so revered throughout the decades of his reign? It boggles my mind, to tell you the truth, because not that he hasn't done a lot, but it boggles my mind that somebody can be so revered for so long, right? U.S. presidents would do anything to have probably half of his popularity rating for just their 8 years in power. So it amazes me that he still is so well respected. But he has done a number of really interesting things that, could garner such respect.
Sure, that's true, yeah. So he, even though he is, I think, the richest or among the richest monarchs.
I believe he's worth $30 billion U.S. dollars.
So he's worth $30 billion, or his institutions, I guess, are worth $30 billion, which is a pretty nice chunk of change. But in spite of that, the appearance, at least, is that he's not a greedy, money-hungry leader, but that he cares for the poor. And I think this is the widely held belief in Thailand. And he's pursued projects that would lead you to believe that he really does care about the poor. I'm not saying that he doesn't. So something that he's done is, well, let me give you a backstory. The first time I went to Thailand, and I was probably 18, 19 years old. And I met a Thai person who told me that they would die for their king. And I thought, wow, that's pretty crazy, how many people would say that about their leaders? And she was just an average person. It's not like she was part of the Secret Service or something. And I said, well, why do you love your king so much? And she told me that he cares so much for the poor. And my friend wasn't a poor person, but this garners respect, right? So I said, oh, really? He cares for the poor? That's great. How does he care for the poor? And she said, well, a few years back, there was a really bad drought, and he made it rain on all of the farms. And my first thought was, wow, this sounds crazy. But, you do some research, and I don't know how effective this method is, but he has patented, remember that he studied science when he was younger and probably continued to. He's patented a couple of technologies for cloud seeding, which basically injects some sort of chemicals. What chemicals? Nitrous?
I don't know. But this technology is called cloud seeding, right?
Right. Cloud seeding. So he's patented a couple of technologies regarding cloud seeding, where basically you're injecting chemicals into the clouds and forcing their water out.
That's fascinating.
I don't know how effective it is, but I've heard that other countries have utilized it as well.
Yeah, I believe the Chinese government actually used it prior to the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing. They implemented cloud seeding as a way to help clear out the pollution. But
okay, that sounds familiar.
But we digress.
Well, it's still interesting. So he patented not cloud seeding in general, but certain technologies to make it supposedly more effective, which that's pretty amazing. Well, I think another reason that he is so revered in the country is not just because he cares for the poor, whether in reality or by appearance, but also because he's just been the king for so long, and I think that is a source of some pride for Thais. They've had, they're one of the few countries that still has a king, and he wields power, sometimes unbelievable power, over the politics in the country when he so chooses. But if you imagine, I was looking at an age pyramid of Thailand, and this guy's been around for 69 years, and more than 90% of the population is under 69 years old. So basically, almost everyone in the country has lived their entire lives with him as a king, and probably virtually everyone who can remember, he's been king for their entire lives. So they've never gone through that experience of changing kings, or maybe having another one that they may have preferred or not.
I also wonder, if you can make this correlation at all, but just consider the environment in Southeast Asia. Thailand, I believe, is the only country that was never colonized by European power, and which, to me, it kind of makes you think that maybe the head of state in Thailand, formerly Siam, just symbolizes this great power that was able to keep out outside colonizers.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's absolutely got to be a source of pride for many Thais, whether they attribute that to the king or not. I'm sure some of them do.
In the 50s, decolonization was still happening.
Yeah, it's true. So I think that they've got a lot to respect. But having said that, it's interesting. I don't want to insult the king, but you go around Thailand, and anyone who's been there can tell you that there are pictures of him everywhere in homes and shops, giant murals everywhere, next to Buddha and temples. And I'm not saying that it's forced. A majority of Thais really do love him.
Oh, it's interesting. And considering the things that he's done in the past, his patents on cloud seeding and making it rain in times of drought, that's a pretty incredible thing, and almost godlike, I guess, being able to manipulate the weather, if you want to interpret it that way. Right.
It's interesting you say that, because I feel like, I want to be careful about my words here, but I feel like for a lot of people, it's almost like a level of worship.
Okay. So let's change it up here a little bit. We've talked about his background, why he has such reverence amongst his people. But let's kind of delve deeper into that. I'd like to talk about something called a cultural topography, which is more or less just leadership analysis. And I think this is an interesting tool that is utilized in many, many different ways as a way to just gain a deeper understanding of a leader, or any person for that matter. Mm-hmm. Just gain a deeper understanding of their habits, their decision making, their leadership style, can possibly make predictions off it, or by utilizing it. But yeah, I believe this tool was used to do things such as find Saddam Hussein. In a cultural topography, what is it exactly? What exactly are you analyzing? You're taking all sorts of factors in a person's life, in an individual's life, their family, their religious beliefs, their environment, the geography in which they were born, their hobbies, their interests, their education, just any kind of thing that has an influence over a person's life. Just take it, parse it out, analyze it, and see if those items have any influence over an individual, a world leader's decision-making habits. So in the context of the King of Thailand, Kevin, what do you think are some things or some factors in his life that have influenced his policies or perhaps influenced the lives of the people of the Kingdom of Thailand?
As far as influencing the people, I would say, I think that a lot of Thais feel like they have some sort of a personal connection in the sense of, they know some personal details of the man. Like I mentioned, there are pictures of him playing saxophone all over the place because he's a big jazz musician.
So music, jazz in particular, is a big hobby of his.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a pretty skilled jazz musician, actually. He's a jazz composer as well, and maybe we can play some of his music at the end of this episode. But I think that's probably had an influence on Thais.
In what sense? Have we seen anything in Thailand itself that alludes to the king's fondness of jazz music or music in general?
I'm not saying that the king is a fan of music, so he mandates that people learn music, but I think it's probably had some sort of an indirect effect. For example, music education is a requirement for most of your childhood in Thailand for the first 9 years of your education.
9 years of music education.
Right. It's interesting because here in the United States, for those of you who are listening outside of the United States, which I know is many of you, in the United States, music education is
oftentimes optional.
It's almost always optional. On top of that, it's only optional for a couple of years for a lot of places. Some places will let you do it throughout middle school and high school. I think, at least where I grew up in Texas, there was 1 year of music education in elementary school where we learned how to play the recorder, and that was it.
But, with regards to the King of Thailand.
Right. So I think you can see a correlation there at least.
9 years of music education.
Sure.
The King of Thailand, if someone who loves music and you see the children learning music for 9 years of their life, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that's actually fairly unique as well. When you look at other countries throughout the world, I was doing some research. I didn't find a whole lot that require that long of music education. That's one way we could say that he's had an influence on his people.
Apart from his love of music or his passion for music, what other kind of factors do you think influences either the King of Thailand's habits or daily life in Thailand?
Okay, so I think you could say on maybe a more superficial level, every day of the week has got a different color in Thailand. I'm not sure if there are other countries that follow this type of culture also, but I'd never heard of it before. So, for example, the king was born on a Monday. Mondays in Thailand are yellow days. That's the lucky color of the day, and red is the unlucky color of Mondays. On Sundays, red is actually the lucky day, and blues are unlucky, right? So the king was born on a Monday, so his color is yellow, and you see people wear yellow on Mondays throughout the country, or especially on his birthday. It's been kind of politicized in the last decade to where a party has adopted yellow, so some people have stopped doing that.
So maybe because the King of Thailand, who follows Thai tradition, despite his international upbringing, being born in the United States, being educated in Switzerland,
right?
Despite his international upbringing, he still is committed to Thai tradition, Thai culture, and he follows this color system.
Right, and I mean other people do too, and I think other people did too as well before. But I think it's established itself more.
Given the people of Thailand's reverence for the king, and people tend to emulate people that they admire, right?
Sure.
So they see their head of state so passionate about this one particular aspect of Thai culture. I find it very understandable that people would follow suit, and if they see the King of Thailand, if they see their king actively participating in this one particular aspect of Thai culture, I find it logical that they would follow suit.
Yeah, it's true. And it's interesting because, I mentioned that yellow is his color because he was born on Monday. Interesting though, since we said he was born in Massachusetts, it was technically a Tuesday in Thailand when he was born, so there's some ambiguity there. Tuesdays in Thailand are pink days. Now Pink, yeah. Pink is the lucky color. Yellow and white are the unlucky colors. Now, and I also mentioned that the color system has been politicized. One party adopted the color yellow, so people who didn't want to associate with that party would stop wearing it, even though that's the king's color. Around the same time, though, the king has gone through some health issues. When he got out of the hospital several years back, apparently his astrologer told him that he should start wearing pink because it would be more lucky for him. So he was seen wearing a pink suit, and the pink T-shirt started flying off the racks after that.
So that's interesting. That's another item of cultural influence that we can talk about. You said his astrologer advised him to wear more pink.
Right.
So that gives insight into something that he believes in. That gives us a little bit more understanding into his decision-making habits, the King of Thailand's decision-making habits, because we know that he follows this Thai tradition and he listened to the advice of an astrologer. That influenced his daily life and encouraged him to wear more pink, which subsequently encouraged the people of Thailand to buy more pink.
Yeah, true enough.
Cool. So a couple little layers of analysis into the King of Thailand. We see the influence that his passion for music and observance of Thai tradition and astrology, that can, how that can affect the people of Thailand. So transitioning from a very light leadership analysis of the King of Thailand, let's talk about some criticism. He enjoys very, very high levels of reverence in Thailand, but is there any criticism either amongst the people of Thailand, or probably a better route to go, any international criticism?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's interesting is that the biggest criticism is that you cannot criticize the king. So there are rules in place that have been in place for most of his rule, that you can't criticize the king, you can't criticize the royal family, you can't criticize projects that he does or anything of that nature. And if you do, then it's usually a prison sentence. And they've actually enforced this with foreign tourists as well.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's something that's completely contrary to what we would enjoy in the United States, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Freedom of speech.
Yeah, right. Most would say that it's anathema to a democracy. And actually, the king himself has talked about how he should be able to be criticized. I think in 2005, he gave a speech to the people of Thailand, and he said something along the lines of, people need to feel that they can criticize me because I'm human, and if no one criticizes me, then I will never know how to improve, something along those lines. And interestingly, people started criticizing him, and the rate of arrests for criticizing the king skyrocketed after that. So he comes out and says, people need to criticize me, and then people start getting arrested for it on a much more frequent basis.
What are the penalties for? You say arrest, but what are the penalties specifically for criticizing him? So
I think that it's up to a 15-year prison sentence.
Oh, wow.
Right. I mean, I'm sure it varies. It could be a slap on the wrist sometimes. Some of the foreign tourists, I remember, who criticized the king, I think somebody stomped on his picture. I don't remember the details exactly, but they were imprisoned for a short time, and then the embassy complained, and they were eventually released. But either way, for a Thai citizen, the prison sentence can be pretty lengthy. Having said that, most people love the king anyway, so a criticism of the king is like it's like an insult to them as well.
Very interesting. So despite always having known about Thailand for a very long time, I had never really known, as I said earlier, much about the King of Thailand, King Bhumibol. So, thanks for providing a lot of insight.
Yeah, absolutely. He's an interesting guy. I know we're getting ready to conclude, but just as an interesting fact, if you're interested, the king actually wrote a couple of books. One of them that I'm looking forward to reading is called The Life of Tong Dang, which is a biography of his pet dog.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
A biography of his pet dog.
Yes, I'm looking forward to reading that.
I'm sure that'll fly off the shelves in the Thai version of Barnes & Noble.
Could be. And then I have an idea. Rather than signing out with our normal jingle, let's sign out with one of King Bhumibol's songs in his honor.
Cool. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next week.
Look